Okay, welcome to the show. So, yesterday I sort of took a break from talking about impeachment. We did talk about Donald Trump's claim that he would try to use the Supreme Court to block impeachment, but we got a break from the growing sort of demands and momentum that keep building when it comes to the impeachment of the President of the United States. And at this point in time, is a debate on impeachment in the House of Representatives even avoidable, is my question to you today, because the momentum and the calls for this are growing and growing almost hourly. And earlier this week, I told you about Elizabeth Warren saying it's time for impeachment, Kamala Harris saying it's time for impeachment, Congressman Elijah Cummings coming over from, well, there need to be consequences to it's time for impeachment, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe, and on and on and on. And the list has continued to grow during the week. But most notably, what I want to sort of focus in on today is that the list of people calling not just for a debate in the House about the impeachment of Donald Trump, but just calling for impeachment and removal, are increasingly Republicans, which is sort of breaking new ground in this entire debate. Number one, President George W. Bush's former speechwriter, Michael Gerson, now says that, quote, House leaders, who, by the way, remember, the House leaders are Democrats at this point in time, he says House leaders should lay the groundwork for impeachment. He wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post, and he says that he's stepping outside of normal partisanship that we're seeing, where it's Democrats saying impeach and Republicans saying, obviously, we're not going to impeach. He's stepping outside of the normal partisanship. He was George W. Bush's Republican speechwriter. He says this is outside of the normal sort of political fundraising status quo where Republicans are supposed to help Republicans continue to keep raising money. He says this is just so important that it's kind of a fork in the road that will have an impact for decades. Adding his voice to the demands is former Republican governor of Massachusetts, William Weld. William Weld is, you might have heard, mounting a primary challenge against Donald Trump. And William Weld is not only of the mind that Trump should be impeached, he is a Republican who is straight up calling for the resignation of Donald Trump at this point in time. And where I disagree with William Weld is that in an op-ed that he wrote, Weld said the country would be, quote, better served with a president like Mike Pence. I don't think that that's true. Pence is a disgusting partisan ideologue with extremist religious views, and in different ways than Trump is a disaster for the country, Pence would be a disaster for the country. But where I agree with William Weld is that we do need to put aside the kind of calculation about who would replace Trump if Trump resigned or if Trump were impeached. This is a longtime Republican who was a governor who says this can't go on. This has to stop. And meanwhile, the administration that told us it would be the most transparent administration. Remember, Trump told us that it would be. Trump press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders has insisted that it is the most transparent administration. They have not had a press briefing in a record. It's either 44 or 45 days at this point in time. I don't even know the exact number of days. And during that 40-plus day period during which there has been no press briefing, we learned from the content of the Mueller report that Sarah Huckabee Sanders admits to straight up having lied during press briefings. And so there are more and more calls for her to quit or to resign or for someone to fire her. I guess it would be Donald Trump, basically for her to go away one way or the other. And let's talk about the Sarah Huckabee Sanders thing a little bit. I understand that the job of the press secretary is to put the best possible spin on the positions of the President of the United States. There is no press secretary who has not been deceptive by omission. There is no press secretary who uses semantic games in order to sort of distort the practical reality or the spirit of certain situations. Sarah Huckabee Sanders isn't unique in that way, but the level of dishonesty and lying by Sarah Huckabee Sanders rises to something that has not been seen in recent political times by a press secretary. And more importantly, usually when we say the press secretary lied, they insist they didn't lie. They insist they see the numbers differently than critics, for example. The Mueller report, if you haven't seen it or you've forgotten what I'm referring to, she testified, and it is in the Mueller report, that yes, she straight up lied to the press corps about the positions of FBI agents regarding the Trump-Russia probe. She knew it was a lie. She sort of chalked it up to a verbal slip, but verbal slip is, like I've said before, oops, instead of saying Mitch McConnell, I said bitch McConnell, right? It was a slip. Oops, I said Steve Ducey, Fox News reporter, instead of Steve Ducey. That's a verbal slip. Concocting whole cloth and ascribing a political position to FBI agents that you claim have called the White House supporting Donald Trump when it was just invented whole cloth, that's not a verbal slip, right? That's not a linguistic error that was made. That's called straight up lying, and it's part of a report from a special counsel. She should resign or be fired or whatever, probably not going to be, but it is absolutely and completely indefensible. And then thirdly, in the midst of all this, impeachment talk, Sarah Huckabee Sanders should go talk. In the midst of all this, the White House is completely clamping down on letting anybody in their administration talk to authorities or investigators of almost any kind. The White House is refusing to let Trump advisor Stephen Miller testify before the House Oversight Committee. The chairman of the committee is calling it massive obstruction. Trump is claiming, we don't know why, that Robert Mueller, quote, checked his taxes as part of the Mueller probe, so that anybody saying they still want to look at Donald Trump's taxes should just stop because Mueller looked at them and said everything's fine. That's a lie. There is no evidence whatsoever that Robert Mueller checked Trump's taxes. Trump's taxes certainly aren't even mentioned in the unredacted portions of the Mueller report. It's lies on top of obstruction, on top of lies. And the question we should think about over the weekend, since this is the Friday show going into the weekend, is if this series of events doesn't trigger consequences for the president and his administration, right? Like if we decide this doesn't rise to the level of requiring consequences, what will? If this doesn't trigger some action, I'm not even sure what that action is necessarily. Are we saying that presidents are really immune from consequences no matter what they do? And if that's what we're saying, that can't be what the founding fathers intended when they framed the parameters of the United States of America. So that's what I'm going to be thinking about this weekend. We will see between now and Monday or Tuesday how this continues to develop, whether more prominent voices say it's time to, at minimum, start the debate about impeachment in the House. Maybe there's a determination made to actually file articles of impeachment. Maybe the determination is made that a censure of the president is the result. But it seems to be getting to that point in time to at least have the debate in a formal way on the floor of the House of Representatives. And also over the weekend, and I hope to have data for you by Monday, we will see what impact yesterday's presidential campaign announcement by Joe Biden has on the race within the Democratic Party and also in hypothetical matchups against Donald Trump. So let me know what you think about any of this, about all of this, about other stuff. I'm always available to you on Twitter at @dpakman. You can also follow the David Pakman Show on Twitter for the latest clips from the show at David Pakman Show. Follow them both, and we will follow up about all of these stories after the weekend. Today's episode is sponsored in part by the BRD Bitcoin wallet. Whether you have experience with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies or you've been wanting to give it a try for the first time, BRD offers the most elegant, easy-to-use Bitcoin wallet out there. It's an app on Android and iOS, lets you trade cryptocurrencies, store all of your Bitcoin and crypto on the app totally free, send and receive Bitcoin with the app, use a credit card to purchase cryptocurrency, and it's 100% private and secure, virtually impossible for someone to hack your account. BRD themselves won't even know your information. There are no logins, no passwords. You just use your key to access your Bitcoin, and you're the only one who has access to it. It was the first ever Bitcoin wallet in the iOS App Store. They've been around since 2014. They have more than 2 million users. BRD is one of the oldest, most established, and most trusted Bitcoin wallets in the industry. We recently interviewed Aaron from the BRD team, and it was a great conversation. You should search our channel for it and check it out. All BRD wants to do is to make Bitcoin more accessible and simpler to use for those who want to use it. And that's what they've accomplished with their super powerful, easy to use app. Download it. It's perfect for anyone who's just getting started with Bitcoin. Just as good if you already know what you're doing. I've put a link underneath this video.